After the success of the original Jurassic Park, fans pressured for a sequel. Alongside the original novel's publication in 1995, production officially began for the sequel. Spielberg returned to direct, and some of the original film's cast, notably Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, Joseph Mazzello, and Ariana Richards, returned. It also uses more CGI effects on the dinosaurs, and while animatronics are also used, they aren't as frequent here, therefore removing some of the magic that made the original a classic. But even with those changes, this is actually a fairly decent sequel. It was never going to match the original Jurassic Park, but even with the problems listed by critics and audiences, it still is a very solid watch and could be better than some of the recent mediocre works that attempt to follow in the footsteps of the original. So, what makes The Lost World a fairly solid sequel for a film that was already so good in the first place? Why does it expand its series even further? And how does it stay apart from being a typical Spielberg cash grab? In today's movie review, I'll be talking about the sequel to Spielberg's all-time classic, The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Here's why it storms major, but lacks some of the magic that entered extinction long ago. First off, the action set pieces remain as great as they've always been, and the dinosaur action is a lot more here, which makes sense because it's 1 minute longer and the dinosaurs have more screen time, which makes it more watchable for them since the characters are significantly weaker than previously. There's plenty of action, including the shivering opening sequence and the sequence where the two T-Rexes attack the mobile lab trailer, aka the infamous cliffhanger sequence. It builds on the suspense, and the tension is just as terrifying as suspenseful. But my favourite scene in the movie is the grassland sequence, where InGen mercenaries run into a long field of grass, only to be picked off one by a herd of velociraptors, which is not only shot very well, but it's so terrifying since it's very unpredictable. This is why Spielberg knows how to make action truly rumble, even if it's in a sequel. What's improved in the sequel over the original is the special effects and the CGI visual style. The first film was revolutionary for using animatronics and was used so much to help keep the costs down. This movie has a slightly higher budget and uses CGI effects most of the time, but also uses animatronics for some of its biggest dinosaurs, specifically the T-Rex. The visuals have also aged well, as they help make the dinosaurs more appealing, even heavier and massive in scale, and fully integrated in the rain-drenched, overgrown environments of Isla Sorna. The cinematography helps the high-stakes action of the tension, making it feel even more realistic. The better CGI effects make the dinosaurs so much more enjoyable as they look even more realistic and also gives them more action. It also helps the environment of dinosaurs, making the world building full of these creatures and also showcasing the terrors hidden deep within. Even if they are weaker than the first movie, the performances remain very solid. The film removes some classic characters like Alan Grant and instead makes Ian Malcolm the main protagonist this time around. This is great for those who are a massive fan of his character. It also helps the continuity to remain intact, to make it feel more like a follow-up instead of its own thing. The film also brings back Richard Attenborough as John Hammond, even if his screen time is barely any, but still it's nice to see how his character has changed with a more darker approach to make his limited screen time feel more earned, and also his grandchildren, Lex and Tim Murphy, return. So at least some of the original cast return, rather than giving us an entirely new cast of characters. The film also has its own unique antagonist, Roland Tembo, being very intimidating as well as being very cunning for a film in general. He's got the heavy greed of a character led heavily by his poachers who are trying to track down a Tyrannosaurus. With a smaller cast, the characters ensure their screen time is used well, rather than wasted. In a bigger scope of dinosaurs and world building, The story becomes quite solid to follow, with loads of elements to point out. Rather than being set on the same place, the film is set in a new environment, Isla Sorna, which is great because it makes it feel more original and not so repetitive. It has lots of abandoned areas, dinosaurs, and lots of others that were left for years, giving it its title, The Lost World, effectively, and showing the viewers exactly what happens next, with some recurring characters and elements that fans of the original enjoyed, even if there are some signals of diminishing returns. It tries not to copy the same formula as the original. If the film had tried to be like that movie with a story and action and direction that was commonly used in that film, this sequel would have flopped and nobody would have seen it. Even still, it does a decent job in using its effective budget to be very realistic, which is impressive for its time and when it was released. Lastly, one great point that this movie retains from its predecessor: the scares and horror elements are all mostly intact, as again the CGI effects makes the cinematography more realistic in its setting. The dark tone is also here, the pacing is just as great, being purposeful and taut. There are rooms for suspense as the deaths are creepy and unsettling, keeping the suspension that makes nature feel more unpredictable like it was seen in the original film. The T-Rex in this film isn't the same as Rexy was in the original, nor having that same unlikely hero character that Rexy was used throughout the entire series. This one, and its mate, is bigger, scarier, and arguably more savage, like where it goes scaring the characters inside the tent and they try to escape, and also the memorable sequence where it starts causing a rampage in San Diego, though that does lead to a dog being killed on screen, which is animal cruelty. Once again, the film is directed flawlessly by Steven Spielberg and composed wonderfully by John Williams. The film does have a good ending though, with all the dinosaurs safe and sound, and the T-Rex family can live a happy life, showcasing the satisfaction of them not being killed off. If I could say two bad aspects that this movie carries, or that the writing is really weak, and you can see it throughout the film. It has that generic humans running away from the dinosaurs cliche, and you can see it throughout the entire film, unlike in the original where the humans did try to fight back against the creatures. The characters are also a step down, with Jeff Goldblum, as great as he is, turned into a boring father figure who is more action oriented and tries to copy the same magic that Alan Grant had, but ultimately falls flat, especially since the new characters like Kelly and Sarah are extremely annoying and come off as chaotic in the action, often leading to some deaths. The dialogue is also boring as well, as it would make one want to skip the humans entirely and focus on the dinosaurs, since they hog all the spotlight, which also makes it a too many monsters, not enough human drama type of film, lacking good human characters alongside its fantastic action sequences. It feels much weaker than the original, even if the film itself is still a very solid attempt at trying to retain what makes a thriller truly compelling. My second and final negative of this movie is that the characters are extremely lackluster. As I said before, the voice acting is just mediocre, and the dialogue is poorly written. The development isn't as strong as it was, and Ian Malcolm is now a generic father figure that barely contributes to the story. And he's not just as funny as he was before, given the idea of how the film tries to turn a comic relief into its own story, and fails to give him enough depth to hold the story on its own. Sarah Harding is also an absolute idiot, and also tries to be the always paleontologist type of character. All the other characters are not done well, as you can clearly see that they are either fodder for the dinosaurs to munch on, or just needed as stock characters to help move the story along, and the performances are more lackluster than originally. It also removes some of the charm that made the original film so beloved. The Lost World, Jurassic Park, is a very good sequel to a masterpiece, and it's one of the rare circumstances of a sequel neatly following the footsteps of expanding the series into a loyal fandom. The action set pieces are spectacular with memorable dinosaurs, The special effects are improved upon with some great animatronics, some of the performances are decent, the storytelling is great, and it has some solid scares thanks to the continuous streak of directional effort by Steven Spielberg. But the writing is notably weaker than before, with some of the pacing being extremely sluggish, and some of the characters are extremely terrible and they lack character development. Still, it manages to be an all-round decent experience, even if it does change things up a little bit. It could be said that, although the film wasn't that well received at the time, it is also still miles ahead of the weaker attempts that have tried to be like the original. It's a definite example that these movies are good in their own right, but don't come anywhere near close to the original movie, since they try to copy and paste the same formula, but also feel very rushed. I'm still glad they continued this series though, even if again franchise fatigue has hit it hard at this rate. The Lost World, Jurassic Park, is a welcome return to form for Steven Spielberg, as well as a return to try and create that same magic of the original. But it still could have been a bit more, especially with how hard it became from beginning to end. The Lost World, Jurassic Park, never stomps or approaches the thrilling experiences of its classic predecessor, but it's fairly entertaining for a sequel that attempts to recapture that summer sense of magic. My final score for this dinosaur sequel is an 8 out of 10 and a grade B+. It's fairly solid, though I wouldn't say it's fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. It's just a nice little brainless blockbuster for fans of all ages. I genuinely think that the Jurassic Park series shouldn't have been continued or rebooted at all. The original was fine as it is because it was an experience that everyone loved, especially back in the day. Though I am still glad that it did continue because it spawned many different merchandise, including spin-offs, toys, games, and plenty more to come from. Just one that screams, we need more teeth. But with that being said, leave a like on this video if you guys did enjoy my review on The Lost World, Jurassic Park. And also remember to subscribe if you are new, and hit that bell icon to see more content on my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Take care of yourselves.